Hi everyone, I'm GREYMOND. Today I'm doing a Q&A for members only. If you would like to become a member, please click the join button that's next to the subscribe button. First question is it normal that after themes have switched that your main theme comes back again but not as powerful or as disturbing? Yes, and that's because you are on to another theme A, and when you are on to another theme, this one it's like it's put on the back burner, but just keep in mind that it's still on the back burner. So the fact that it's coming in, if you start to pay attention to it, it will grow again. The other way it can happen is that you had a main theme, now your OCD is going away and it seems like it's less powerful, and it is less powerful right now. But give it a day of intense rumination or doing compulsions and it will grow right back up. So you have to be very careful and keep it down until your brain kind of forgets and moves on permanently. But I would say for the first 6 months, for sure, for the first year as well, reduce stress. You have to be focused on not giving into the thoughts. Otherwise, it can come right back. But yes, but that what you're describing is completely normal. Next question is, hi Ali, I suffer from religious OCD for years now. I always get thoughts in my head that I am asking God to punish me or saying bad stuff to God. Now, if they were just thoughts, I wouldn't be so bothered because of my faith. In my faith, we are forgiven for all bad thoughts. But these thoughts are loud and make it seem that I'm actually saying them with my tongue. Like it feels like I've heard myself say them. Not like hallucinating way, but just sort of saying it under my breath. Then I become convinced I've said it, so I try to go over what I've said many times in my mind. It has been 3 years. I have wasted fighting over these thoughts. Is this OCD or is this another mental illness? Also, I was skinny before this illness, but now I have put on so much fat as when the thoughts come, I get strong urge to binge on sugar. Is there some sort of chemical reason for this? Finally, is there any chance you can put some stamps on your videos for our names so we can know which video our question is answered? Just saves us time. You can maybe add it to the description. Yes, I will do that. I don't know if I'll do it in this video, but going forward, I will do the name stamps because it would be better to people get to right to their question. In terms of religious OCD, this is classic religious OCD, and what I recommend, and I'm telling you this, it seems annoying, but this will get you recovered. You're asking me how to recover. This will get you recovered. Start tracking the time of how much you're doing this rumination and start reducing. I'm telling you, I do this with clients. Every single client who's doing it are getting better. Every single client who's not doing it, not so good. I would say the boost you get in the recovery is about, well, this is what I see from clients, is about 70%. So how do you do it? You track the amount of time you are ruminating. So from when you wake up till 9 a.m. So at 9 a.m. you'll look back. How much did I ruminate? So how much did I respond to the thoughts? How much did I check? How much did I try to try to fix it? Try to figure it out, right? Put down the time in minutes. Then 9 to 12, again at 12 o'clock, look back. So every 3 hours, you're having a check-in with yourself and you're putting down how much time you ruminated. And little by little, you will start to reduce. So, okay, so say your first day was 400 minutes, okay? Then by the end of the week, I want you to be in low 300s. Then the week after that, in low 200s, then in low hundreds, and so on. That your OCD is entirely based on your rumination. So the more you ruminate, the worse this will get. The less you ruminate, the better this will get. So it's just step by step reducing rumination. That's what you have to do in order to recover. And it's step by step. I promise you, you will recover. Because sometimes you won't be able to refuse, obviously, but sometimes you will be able to refuse. And if you just refuse 25% more each week, you will eliminate it in a month, in 4 weeks. So 70% of the time in the course of a day, you're doing everything that you've done the previous day. But 25% you're pushing through and you're saying no. So when there's anxiety, but it's like something you can handle, that's when you're saying no. Next question is, hi Ali, sometimes I have intrusive impulses in daily life. I feel like intrusive wish to do something, to say or to ask someone a certain thing, to figure something out. For example, an intrusive impulse to push like a button or to write a comment when scrolling, or to push the like button or to write a comment while scrolling social net feed. Not because I really want to do, but for getting rid of intrusive feeling. It feels like the feeling of the urge will stay until I give it the until I give in to the intrusive impulse. Should I just ignore these intrusive impulses as ERP? Yes, absolutely. You have to ignore them, because the more you're giving in, I promise you, the worse they get. So it is just that. It's just choosing to ignore over and over again. Like I was saying in the previous question, right? When you are tracking it. So in this situation, I would say track rumination as 1. So how I would say 9 to 12, 12 to 3. But also track compulsions as well. So those would be 2 different numbers. One is number of minutes you're responding, not that how often the thought is coming in, but just when you're responding. So when thought comes in, and you're like, let me sit down and think about it. From that moment, you're tracking the time, and then how many compulsions you're doing. I'm telling you, this really, really works, and it's just putting one foot in front of the other, less each day. Just doing a little less each day. Next question is, hi Ali, I have religious OCD. I just want to know how to handle it. As religious OCD is different from other OCD, it is regarding God, which cannot be taken for granted. How do I manage it? Because religious OCD is not different than any other type of OCD. It's the same. It's just gives you a premise that's something that's, for you, this will be the scariest. This is what it gives you. For somebody else, something else is scariest, right? And that's what it gives to them. Religious OCD doesn't have anything to do with religion. It's just a premise to get you into a compulsion, just a ruse to get you into a compulsion. So if religion triggers you, it will give you religious OCD. Religion doesn't trigger you, something else, right? So don't let the fact that you're stuck on religious OCD somehow sidetrack you away from recovery. It really doesn't make any difference whatsoever what the thoughts are. It's just, for you, it happens to be this, and that's it. Next question is, I feel like there's a lot of misinformation about what full recovery is out there. My interpretation from you was that when you reach full recovery, you no longer have anxiety other than what's considered normal, and no longer will experience intrusive thoughts like harm thoughts, for example, but will still worry and get strange thoughts from time to time like everyone else does. Is this interpretation correct? Yes, it is correct. I would say when you're saying I will no longer experience intrusive thoughts, it kind of falls in line that like everybody really experiences intrusive thoughts from time to time. They've proven over and over again that people with OCD and people without OCD get the same thoughts. I guess they just don't find it to be intrusive because they're not reacting to it the same way as a person who has OCD or is about to develop OCD does, right? So, but basically you become just like everybody else. Maybe a little bit more sensitive because you have that general kind of brain sensitivity that creates or is likely to develop OCD. But generally speaking, you become like everyone else. The next question is, have you ever experienced a relapse after you fully recovered? If so, what did you do? And how can we make ourselves mentally strong to prevent a relapse? I have an interesting story on this. So after recovery, and keep in mind, I've never had really contamination OCD in its classic way. That I mostly had PUREO, those kinds of things. I didn't really experience much of contamination. I had health OCD, but it wasn't. It was kind of a little contamination, but not much. Not in the classical movie sense, let's say. So one day, I was just whatever doing something around the house, and I had this thought just fly through my brain. And again, people with OCD and people without OCD get the same thoughts. And I thought, oh, maybe there's still bacteria on this. And I caught myself in that moment. I'm like, no, I know what this is. And I'm telling you, if I would have Googled this and started to research, we don't know where it would have led to. So it was very important for me to in that moment to be like, no, and it was just a little bit past my maybe, I don't know, 6 months after recovery or something, this likely time where OCD can come back and switch themes on you. And it was very important. But it's like, if you are on top of it and if you know what to look for, this is why a lot of times people find that the Q&As are triggering, and I can understand how they are triggering, but at the same time, it's good for you to at least be triggered here rather than when you are, say, out having fun or at work or somewhere else and you hear something and it triggers you, right? It's kind of like you have to be bulletproof. You have to become bulletproof. And that's how you do it. And if you know what contamination OCD is like, religious OCD is like, harm OCD is like, I don't know, sensorimotor OCD is like, you do become bulletproof from this thing, that it can't just switch themes on you because you've heard it before. So you know what to look for, that, at least generally speaking. Next question is, hi Ali, I have a mixture of scrupulosity, harm OCD, and religious OCD. Do you have any advice on how to go about making a decision when you are confronted with an OCD situation where each option is negatively associated? For example, this would be against a good person, against another, or this pro-evil person. Sometimes I don't know what I would have picked if I didn't have OCD or if I am influenced by certain associations. I worry about being drawn to the evil association. Also, do you have any advice on how to deal when you are shopping for something and OCD then associates something as being bad or against the person you like? How can you buy it without feeling guilty? Like, I don't care enough about others' well-being. Shopping has become very difficult because I find myself in moral dilemma situation. So this is another situation where it's really important for you to track the time that you're ruminating. And for exposure exercises, try to, I know to you right now, it sounds very scary, but you have to practice this. This is very common OCD that I see. Like yours is very, very common. And it's like you get a thought of, I can't buy this with bad thoughts. If I buy this, then I'm a bad person. Who's telling this to you? OCD. So what do? You go and buy it. Yep. Watch me be a bad person. Go ahead, OCD. Let's see this. Let's see this, the crowning moment where I become a bad person. Here I go, rebelling against my captor, and stop being in OCD by releasing yourself from it. And the way you do it is on purpose. Just buy it. Just, don't check. Don't ruminate. Going back to one of the first question, reduce the time. Guys, I'm telling you, this is what works. For PUREO especially, but for compulsions, you also have to track compulsions. But for PUREO, and with PUREO, I kind of use the term very loosely because there's never pure PUREO. There's always some compulsion. There's Googling, there's asking, checking, there's always a little bit of avoidance. There's always a little bit of something. But if your OCD is more thought-based, you need to track the amount of time you're ruminating. It's just extremely important. And little by little, you will start to pull yourself out of it. All it takes is just 25% a day pushing through. 75% you can do exactly the same, and this reducing will work. Just each week, overall, by the end of the week, you have to be 25% less in everything, in compulsions and rumination across the board. This is your situation, what you're describing is classic OCD. So you will feel guilty. You have to view this guilt as part of your OCD. It's a symptom. It means nothing. It's literally just a symptom of your OCD. And you need to do recovery work. Next question is, hi Ali, OCD starts for me when bedtime comes. It manifests with checking compulsions, ovens, plugs, devices, windows, doors, out of fear that something bad will happen. There are nights when I can't sleep due to anxiety from OCD, and that causes me to feel awful mentally and physically the next day, which I feel gets the OCD to even higher level the next night. I know that compulsions should be resisted. It's just that occasionally I have been able to get relief and sleep by doing them. How do you not react and resist to the OCD when what is at risk is doing harm to your health by not sleeping and the OCD getting worse? So sleeping is actually a big fear and can also become a theme. So I'm so worried about. It's kind of like right now. It's almost like there's two themes here, right? It's I have to check these things because of harm OCD on one side, and I have to check because I'm afraid that I will not sleep or I will not get enough sleep, which might cause more thoughts on the other. So it's like almost like a split, like a theme that's like split into two separate themes, and kind of attack you on both fronts. So what I would do is in case when your compulsions are at night, my suggestion, and I see this very often, is just to go a lot slower. So if 25% in this situation seems like a lot, okay, so let's do one less check each night. If even that seems like too much, then one less check every other night. And just slowly walk yourself down from the amount of checks you are doing. So, or even when you're doing a check, maybe do a less thorough check. So, when I do exposure exercises, I like to, like with clients, I like to stick to exposures no higher than 7 out of 10. When you're at 10 out of 10, you're reacting, you're ruminating. That's not exposure. You know, it doesn't help that if, for example, if you don't physically go and check, but you ruminated all night. That's not a win, right? Because you've taken so much time, you've gotten yourself to a 10, all of these kinds of things, right? So it's a good idea to just reduce, just to do a little bit of a check, a little bit of a compulsion, just to a point where you feel comfortable, and then from there stop. So, okay, I feel comfortable enough, but I'm not quite sure. This is where I draw the line. And little by little doing that. With sleep, it's difficult, especially if you're going to work the next day. It's or school, it's difficult. You have to make sure you're functioning well, right? So just take it a little slower, I would say. But do the same, just slower. Next question is Dear Ali, I'm a channel supporter. Thank you for that. I need you to tell me how to do ERP for religious OCD thoughts. What do I do? Let the thought in and not be afraid, or not let it in because it's horrible sin and I will be punished for the horrible thought? How to do ERP for that thought? I have read that religious OCD is to be okay, so I'm not gonna get into the content just to not trigger other people. So you're trying to figure out the content. The person is trying to figure out who counts as a religious figure and all of these kinds of things. What I want you to do is stop ruminating. Your rumination, you will not be able to figure out everything to 100%. These thoughts that are coming into your mind, they are false and they are not coming from you. So it's like basically with religious OCD, what happens a lot is the person will imagine, like if you were walking down the street and you heard somebody say something and you're like, oh my God, this is it. I'm going to go to hell. This is not you talking. This is someone else talking over there. Now with OCD, it happens to be in your mind, but it's still not coming from you. Because if I tell you to stop having these thoughts, stop it right now, stop having them, you're not able to do that because they're not coming from you, right? So because you have no control over these thoughts, you just need to let them be there and continue life as if they don't exist. Stop giving them power by solving them. Your major thing is that you're solving them. So track the time and refuse giving in. So whenever a thought comes in, oh, let's try to figure out this religious thing, whatever. And then you say, let me sit down and figure it out. From that moment, you need to track how many minutes you're doing this and start actively reducing. I'm telling you, you will see difference almost right away in how things are feeling. And it actually doesn't take, it seems very elaborate, like, oh, you have to keep on this tracking of the time. No, just come back to it at 9, then come back to it at 12, put a number down, move on with your day. In the whole day, it took like 10 seconds, not even 10 seconds, right? A second or two per each time period. That's it. And then you have now a statistic of how you are doing, which you can keep track over the course of a month and actually see your recovery happen. Just step by step. Next question is, hi Ali. Before I place my question, please let me thank you for this channel. I'm happy to help. I find it very helpful in terms of recovery from OCD. No, thank you for your kind words. I'm happy to help. Regarding my OCD problem, I suffer from a very specific type of OCD called magical thinking, which I suppose is a subtype of intrusive thoughts related OCD. Yes, magical thinking is extremely common. My thoughts are very scary and I'm very frustrated because of them. I'm really scared that my thoughts can cause harm to people I know. I would never harm anyone and I would never let this happen. So the content of these thoughts truly scares me and I do not really understand why I suffer from them. To neutralize these thoughts, I have to immediately wash my hands and everything I touch when a thought pops up in my mind. Is there any way you can advise me what to do? Every time I try ERP therapy, I fail because I do not want to risk anyone's life, so I prefer to wash my hands and everything to make sure everyone is safe and sound. Could you please advise what to do? Do you have any experience with similar OCD problems or suffer? I see this type of OCD all the time. I call it it is magical thinking OCD, but kind of more plainly, just in conversation, I call it the with bad thoughts OCD. So with bad thoughts, I picked something up, I have to put it down the same way. With bad thoughts, whatever, the person does a compulsion, basically. If anything is, and the person a few questions ago pretty much was saying something very similar, right? Having bad thoughts. So sometimes what I find is helpful is to say kind of something almost silly to yourself to kind of get you out of that zone of, well, because you're right now your mind is fixated on if I don't do this, I will cause harm, right? So what I find kind of in the moment snaps the person out of it a little bit if you say, yes, I can make this happen because I am a magician. I'm a magician, I'm a genie, I can make things happen. And it seems so silly to say that, then you're like, yeah, wait a minute, I'm not a magician, right? And it's a little bit of rumination, but it kind of gets you out of that zone where you are a 10 out of 10 thinking, I can't cause harm, I can't do this, I have to make sure that I'm not causing harm. But then when you start to think about it from a completely different direction of, I'm not a magician, then it doesn't seem 10 out of 10 anymore. It's now more like, say, 7 out of 10. And from 7 out of 10, maybe if you wash your hands still, maybe you will wash them a little less thorough. And then the time after that, a little more less thorough, right? So step by step, you're kind of, again, walking yourself down. So, this is probably, I would say, I see this type of OCD a lot, see harm OCD a lot, religious OCD a lot. Basically the questions I get on the Q&As are very accurately represent the people that I talk to, because like the numbers of how many people have what type of OCD. It's pretty much what I see here is what I see with clients as well. So it's extremely common. So it's just little by little reducing, or being in with this specific OCD, it's almost like not reducing, but being imperfect in the compulsions as the first thing. So, okay, I'm just going to take a little small chance here, right? Because you're not a magician. You're just going to take a little small chance, see how it works out. When the person doesn't die, then you'll take a little bit bigger chance, right? Because these thoughts, they're false. They're not coming from you.